consultant developmental pediatrician, but she is also known more for her other work too. She's chairperson of Center for Applied Research and Education on Neurodevelopmental Impairments and Disability-Related Health Initiatives, K Reddy in short. And of course, she's also the director of the community initiatives of K Reddy. She is also adjunct faculty of SACDID IIPH Hyderabad, a member of the steering committee of IAACD, affiliate faculty of NIPCCD New Delhi, and a working member of the CHW Hub of Health Information Network. She has special interest in community-based initiatives for children with neurodevelopmental problems. She's and in caregiver training for community-based inclusive development, and also for early intervention for neurodevelopmental disabilities in ICF framework. And her focus of current work is disability in development module of CBR in resource-constrained settings, which probably includes a lot of India, and the determinants of health and human capabilities for early childcare and development in community settings. Over to you, Dr. Sunanda, for your talk.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you, Neelam, for that introduction. It had been a very interesting experience, albeit challenging, to plan for this two-part webinar, because play is something we all take for granted. It's an important aspect of child development, yet there is so much research happening and so much evidence that shows that it is important to develop play in a natural way, which is often overlooked even by developmental pediatricians. We developmental pediatricians sometimes forget the child in the child development or the development pediatrics part and focus on the developmental lag, try to make interventions focused on the child's impairment. Yet, my experience over the years showed that this has been one of the variables which actually influences a child's progress as the child grows. And that's how we selected this. And I realized in my team, many also believed in the importance of play, and we selected this topic. Yeah, I think I'll go off thing and make this full screen. Are you able to see? Yeah.
Please go on, yeah.
Yes. So play is an everyday experience for a child, and every child plays. This, what I'm first saying are actually very obvious statements. Why play? It is so universal across all cultures. Maybe there are different ways people play, but for a baby, I think there is so much in common across cultures, and many cultures, in fact, accept it as a very important part of childhood. Many of us have already accepted this as an important way to improve physical health. We hear a lot of people talking about exercises, building muscles, motor coordination, balance, and particularly occupational therapists and physiotherapists do focus on this aspect of play and the functional gains that mobility brings. So another thing that is already accepted also is that it's an organic way of learning. And here we know how special educators also focus on this. And here I must say that this is an important area overlooked when we are looking at children with cerebral palsy, that this organic way of learning is an important way to integrate elements of different domains of development. And so the foundations of socio-emotional learning and building executive function skills are all very influenced by play. Even for children whose ability is limited, we need to keep this in mind to think of how they can play. And then again, this is the best way to include children at a very young age. And in fact, often we realize that inclusion becomes difficult, not just because the children have a lag, but because other children perhaps are not aware of this aspect of how to include children with special needs. So I think it's very important to accept diversity in the way children learn to play with peers. And once that's done, I think this is one of the best pathways to inclusion. Children understand each other and they make sense of the world around by playing. Even if at different ages, the nature of play is different. I think children always observe others, even in the stage of solitary play at times, and they need to explore, do things on their own. And that's why we see the children going through stages of just mouthing something, touching, gripping, and use all their proprioceptive senses, tasting and listening. All these are all the prerequisites for play. And then, of course, today we all are very aware of keeping our work in accordance with UNCRPD, and this is an undeniable child right. So I think having gone through what are the accepted beliefs about play, what else is new that play has started becoming very important for everybody in the field of neurodevelopment? I think there has been a lot of new research, and with neuroradiology becoming very important, people are able to study the brains. The scans have shown babies at play, building their synapses. So the neurosciences research has really established the potential of play in creating neural pathways in the magical process of building brain architecture. I like to use the word magical process because, in fact, it is amazing how a baby just builds its synapses. And so here, maybe it would be really worthwhile to use this quote with which I started. Play sculpts our brains, our bodies, and our relationships, and even our future. So this was 2009, Torgan had a paper in which he spoke about this. And now neuroplasticity in the last 3 decades has been gaining attention. And we all know that while it does not disappear with older age, as children grow older, it's maximum in the very early phase. And it is these first 3 years that actually are very crucial in giving babies the skills for future. So the neuroplasticity in early years is something we have been focusing on when we're talking about early child development in the nurturing care framework. And responsive caring actually includes play. Often the child gives indications of wanting to play with people, and this is where the child starts with an advantage when he has love and responsiveness in the caregiving environment. There are children who actually face some environmental disadvantages, like children in orphanages, and there are children sometimes with severe impairments that people are so focused on getting the impairments corrected, and they are actually, the families are so worried about the diagnosis that precious time is lost in this early phase of nurturing caregiving. While the parents love the babies, they forget that this child is like any other baby, that they need to be cooed to, held in their arms, or played with. So this environmental disadvantage actually now pointed out to the researchers that perhaps neuroplasticity does play an important role in overcoming even environmental disadvantages, not just disabilities. There are children who are so poor and parents going for work, that this child lacks that stimulation. Both motor play and sensory stimulation contribute to the rapid development of synapses or connections, as we all know, between the neurons of the growing brain. And so the child, while it engages in myriads of activities with functional abilities, it is also the the number of times this child actually plays that determines how strong these foundational skills develop. Okay, now let us talk a little about how play relates to learning. It takes approximately 400 repetitions to create new synapses. But when child plays, it takes only about 20 repetitions. This has been proven, and this is a point which we have to take advantage of and teach children through play. One of the neuroscience-based approaches has focused on helping children manage emotions by integrating right brain and left brain. Now, right brain, of course, is concerned with the creative, the emotional, and the expressive elements, as we all know, and left brain for the logical, rule-oriented, analytical skills. And somewhere when we give play activity, it helps in integrating. It almost like the rigid right, the left brain is able to absorb all the skills required for socio-emotional development, which in turn actually is like a scaffolding for the future learning that the child has. And here again, we must say that I know in today's series, we are going to hear a lot about how these are done, and in also about the repetitive play, all these. So I think this principle is what is behind much of the practical aspects that we'll be seeing in the talks that will be following mine. The mindful approach of building self-awareness in a happy situation. This, I think, is very important factor, because when children are not stressed, they pay attention to their own bodies and their actions, and in an environment which is stress-free, they can learn better. And this again is the focus of play therapy, which I'll not be covering a lot, because again, it will be what the speakers after me will be talking about. So just these images show how children in a stress-free environment learn a lot. And in the middle picture, in fact, I must acknowledge Amar Jyoti School for this source. Here you see children with visual impairments. This is in fact children with multiple impairments. In that group, they have been playing football, and the joy with which they learn these games is actually amazing. So we know that the children have been adding synapses through play, that they might have a visual impairment or any other impairment, but they're able to use their other faculties to develop and learn. However, I think people sometimes need to be made aware that children are capable of playing the regular games and playing the ordinary way. And particularly in the first 3 years, when parents are so focused on diagnosis, they forget even to include them with the siblings in the play activity that often happens naturally. We must keep in mind that to make play activities inclusive, one of the first principles is to think of the natural developmental trajectory that children go through. All children have a preference for free play, and they like to explore on their own, but they also respond to people who are playing with them. And then there's also the structured learning and life skills that we all try to give when we are looking at a child needing help to overcome the developmental lag. But in all this, we need to keep in mind the natural developmental trajectory and age-appropriate play. So we may think that it is good to teach this child some education through some educational toys, but then is that age appropriate when you bring an educational toy for the child and try to say this is 1 beat, 2 beats, 3 beats to a 1-year-old? So I think that is very crucial. You have to see what is natural for a baby of that age. And even when, let's say, the mental age, people are also worried about the chronological age versus mental age. I think we need to let the child decide what it enjoys. And that gives a clue to the age appropriateness, even in children with intellectual difficulties or with other, such as autism and attention deficit. These are where generally people can go wrong in the way they introduce the play activities. For children with special needs to play together with their peers, some modifications may be required. But what is essential in making all activities inclusive is love and understanding of those they are playing with. And the parent is the first playmate. Siblings are there all the time at home. Then, of course, teachers, caregivers, or friends, all these people can encourage spontaneous play as well as help them when they're participating in peer. When modifications are required, some children would require modifications depending on the functional impairments. And in such case, there is what is called a tree principle, which is a very practical tool. It's more like a mental map for adapting the game to suit the children. Now, in this tree principle, basically what we need to look at is what is the teaching method that we need to adopt if this child is not into spontaneous play or picking on its own, and whether the rules and regulations have to be altered a little so that the child finds it less challenging. And of course, equipment is something a lot of us do focus on, use appropriate equipment, and that is reasonable accommodation. So like when you introduce a small game, you let some children be seated and some children standing and passing the ball to each other. That's an example also of how you can change the games a little. But most important of all is modifying the environment, whether it's a seating conditions or in the play areas. And as the children grow older and start school, this becomes even more important. And this is something you can get in detail if you go onto the website of the Australian Sports Commission, who actually focus a lot on play and games being a part of schooling. And in fact, now we are at the threshold when people are talking about a national education plan in preschool. And it is, in fact, very appropriate that policymakers keep in mind that play is a very important part of early child learning, early child development and education. So then,
Dr. Sunanda, you're almost at the end of your time. So
yeah, right. So we all know that now it's not just toys and books, and we have to make use of these everyday opportunities. When children get these experiences that promote brain development and the prefrontal cortex neuron wiring is actually at its best. There's a lot of research which talks about the mirror neurons, which again attune the child to very pleasant experiences. There's also the oxytocin levels that in fact make this less stressful and encouraging the child to play. The time in classroom may be actually less important than the time in playground for a child to learn better, because navigating complex social interactions, what scientists have called building a pro-social brain, is very important. Sorry. And so unstructured play is always to be kept in mind as one of the best ways to improve executive functions for future. Play initiates lasting changes in the brain. In fact, even half an hour of play every day has shown changes in processing social interactions, and starting from the social smile of the baby. This has to be kept in mind for children, particularly with conditions such as autism and ADHDs. And I think we'll hear more of it in the course of the evening. So one of the messages that it is one of the best resource to be utilized in all intervention approaches. And here I would like to play this small video clip, which actually summarizes.
Dr. Sunanda, are you there?
Can't see her.
Okay.
Yeah, but she's here. Yeah.
Yeah. So with that, there'll be a lot more. I think the research is still going on. Sorry. So I just wanted to end my talk saying that there is a lot more research happening. So we're moving from not just neocortex, the mirror neurons, and that there even the primitive area is also important. And we'll be listening more about it in our part 2. And I would now like to end this.